right, people that I just adore so much, right? Like the best audience, right? We're gonna talk about 80s vampire movies specifically. It's a topic I've been wanting to get into since last night. And so what happened is like usually a lot of times, guys, I'll be really honest with you. When I decide to do a piece, usually it's like it's current. I take a couple hours every night and I'll watch something. Last night, like I watched the movie, and then I watched House of the Dragon, right? So I usually dedicate, a couple hours. I consider that my research time, right? Where I figure out what's curious to me, what do I want to talk about, stuff like that. So last night, I'm monitoring my check because I got this guy. Like I said, I've been dealing with this guy for like, I don't know, this is like 6 days of going back and forth. So part of me, I want to see how long this is going to go because it helps engagement for the channel. Hey, you guys aren't doing anything about it, right? So I got to get my engagement wherever I can. And this guy's just giving me probably 200 comments over the last like 4 or 5 days, right? On a couple of different videos. So this guy's actually been gold to me. And I don't want to, I don't want to give that up, right? Like I'm being really honest. Like it's great when you have anybody who's that like into something that you're talking about. I have to take it at that way. It is kind of flattering that somebody would care so much about something that I had to say. So I can't step away and say I'm not flattered by it, right? So that's going into. So last night I was sitting around and we were waiting for House of Dragons to come on, and so I'm like, oh, let me put this movie on, and I put on a classic, and I want to talk about it, which is The Lost Boys, but I want to talk about 80s vampire movies because 80s put their own stamp on everything. Like the 80s has a particular like style and like delivery and like fashion and sense that is uniquely the 80s, and you can't run away from it. Now, ironically, my wife loves the 80s. I personally hate the 80s, and I think it's the worst era of all time. Things didn't get cool to me until 90s. That's where it got cool to me at, right? The 80s were not it. But we can go back and look at like the crazy stuff we saw in the 80s on like the hair. Like, I mean, like you take a vampire story and you immediately put 80s style on it. And it looks crazy. It's crazy looking. But we'll talk about these movies. But they had a bevy of really good vampire movies. Like the 80s put their mark on Vampira in that period of time, just by volume. We're going to talk about quite a few. Since the 80s, we had The Hunger, 1983, which is David Bowie, Susan Sarandon. Fright Night, which is 1985. Once Bitten, that was one of Jim Carrey's like earliest flicks. Once Bitten. Life Force, kind of space vampires. Vamp in 1986. The Lost Boys was talked about in 1987, which was a defining vampire film of that decade, blending horror, comedy, and teen culture. So we got a lot of different looks at it through that movie. There was Near Dark, came out in 1987. This is kind of a neo-western vampire masterpiece. Then you have The Monster Squad, also 87. To Die For, 88. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, okay. So this is like not the Nicole Kidman movie, To Die For. That would be 1995. This is 1998. This is a lesser-known vampire horror film, still important for that period of time. Then also you had Waxworks, which is 1988, which is anthology-style horror with a memorable vampire segment within it. You also have Sundown, which is a vampire retreat movie in 1989, and then The Little Vampire, which came out in 1987, which is a family-oriented vampire adventure. Now, some honorable mentions, like some important historical context, is that Salem's Lot had just came out in 1979, so that was really setting the table. So outside of the actual decade, but it really set the table going into the decade. It was very influential on all those movies that were coming out later. Then also Nosferatu, the remake came out in 1980s. So all those movies were a big part of establishing what we got right now, right? And so we're taking classic vampirism, because even if we look at Salem's Lot, and this is kind of important, Salem's Lot was a movie about vampires that came out in the 70s, but it didn't necessarily have the 70s imprint on it. It didn't feel like the 70s. Even though it was the 70s, we still felt like we were dealing with an ancient vampire threat. So we're still dealing with a creature that's, thousands of years old. And that was the whole premise, is that is that, and God, 3 months, is that, you know, we get all that history without really changing. The vampire himself didn't change clothes. Paradise Pink, I love that. The vampire himself did not change. He was not all of a sudden the 70s. This was an ancient vampire creature who had come across from the old country and established himself in Americas, right? So that's the big difference. In the 80s films, the vampires themselves become the 80s. They dress like the 80s, they listen to 80s music, they move like the 80s. So it's a little different in what we get with the Lost Boys. So I'm gonna get into like a lot of these movies. We're not gonna do all of them, but I'm gonna hit 4 of the big ones that I think became the genre. Because this is what happens. In the 80s, vampires became cool. Vampires started wearing leather jackets. They started riding motorcycles. I'd never seen that before. They were listening to rock music. They went to nightclubs. This is also, some of you guys have never even heard of the terms punk and new wave fashion. Punk and new wave fashion, fortunately, died out in the 80s, right? All that punk new wave fashion, it's gone. Right? All the crimped hair, sparkly stuff, all it's gone. I hated every single bit of it, and now it's gone. So this is what we were seeing in the 80s. Look at Lost Boys. Look at how they were dressed. Now, another segment of vampires in the 80s was that this was also about youth culture. Previous vampire movies were about an old dude in a castle. It's not about a castle anymore. This is about freedom mixed with immortality. This is rebellion, escaping parental and ordinary life. So horror movies got to be very, very different. The Gothic castle, like the main hub of vampirism, all of a sudden was gone. And now we're in beach cities. We're dealing with, you know, American suburban kids. We're dealing with cities, bars and nightclubs, small town neighborhoods. So the monster had moved into modern society. This is a big thing that came out of the 80s, that our vampires themselves, they were different. It wasn't that the world around them had changed, but that's not supposed to happen with vampires, right? Like go back and watch Interview with the Vampire. You're talking to Lestat. Lestat hadn't changed. That was the point, is that he is an unchanging immortal. So he always reps that same style. We just think it's cool. We just see Lestat and we're like, yeah, this is a cool guy. But Lestat was cool because he was unchanged. This is where the 80s start to put their imprint on it. And like I said, it's the 80s, so it is what it is, right? And so the 80s also, from a filmmaking standpoint, the 80s love to kind of blend genres, right? Vampire movies could be frightening, but also be like funny and self-aware. So you could laugh. So like Once Bitten, Fright Night, there are still comedies like series. Yeah, Jim Carrey, one of our most successful comedic actors, got his start in Once Bitten, right? So there's a lot that goes on in this. The other part is the found family type, right? Most vampire groups were surrogate families or gangs rather than solitary predators, which is what we're used to. We were used to the old routine of a vampire and his like one handler, right? Like his what's that guy's name? Redcorn. I can't remember the name. The guy's an assistant who was in love with Dracula, right? And he does everything for him. So now we're seeing more family units, especially in Lost Boys and especially in Near Dark. These they more represent an outlaw family. The Lost Boys, these guys are just a rebellious motorcycle gang who just happen to have vampiric abilities. Those things just went together, but they'd have been doing the same stuff pretty much, even if they didn't have vampire movies. Also, with the 80s, sexuality got a lot more explicit. Like the 80s brought us vampire seductions. You got vampire desire, you got addiction, you got obsession, you got dangerous relationships. And The Hunger is the clearest example of how that, like, The Hunger is all about sex. I mean, like, it's vampire second, but it's sex first. The other part is that vampirism becomes an addiction. Something that we would carry as a theme into other movies, including Blade. It's an addiction to the blood itself. So it's about drug addiction, it's about peer pressure, right? It's about toxic relationships, it's about loss of identity. All these things happen, you take that sip of blood going right to the head. So it'll change your whole environment. Now, the practical effects is that we have more elaborate vampire transformation. We see more fangs, claws, glowing eyes, we see a lot of prosthetics, we see explosive deaths. This is the first time we start seeing a vampire blow up. As far as I can tell, I don't think I'd ever seen a vampire blow up for any reason prior to this film. Like there's a scene where they put the vampire in a tub full of holy water, right? He completely blows up, right? This is what we started getting into. So now when we see Blade movies and the vampire blows up, this is where that comes from. So we get all that. So there's some core things, and there's some core things about vampirism that we want to get into. Like growing up, like these are the consistent things so we can understand who Killer the Dog was, right? Growing up versus staying young forever. That was a big thing about vampires. Now I'm gonna be young forever. Fuck you guys, we are young, right? Listen to some Pat Benatar for the rest of my life. I'm going, right? It's also it's freedom versus responsibility. It's desire versus self-control. It is belonging versus individuality. It is beauty hiding monstrosity. So all these things that you get together from the 80s, and the 80s otherwise never did anything great. I mean, there's some good music that came out in the 80s, don't get me wrong. My first concerts were in the 80s, but as a decade, I'm like, whatever. 70s were great, 90s got awesome, and we've been on a tear ever since then. But that goddamn 80s, I'm telling you, man, there's some strange and crazy stuff that's going on in the 80s. But I digress. So let's actually get into the actual film. And look, I thought it was a classic. My wife watched it and had other things to say other than, yeah, this is a classic. That's not what she felt walking out of there. But I kind of feel like because it's still kind of a bad movie, but it's an important bad movie. It's an important bad movie because you got to think about who's in there. And a lot of these names aren't going to matter to you guys now because they're all old guys, but these were the coolest guys. This is Kiefer Sutherland, right? Who you guys probably remember from 24, and I think that's even an old ass series. That's probably 20 years ago from now, right? 10 years at least. He's the guy from 24. He came out of this. Jamie Gertz would go on to do some other big films. Diane Wiest, who was a big part of this, she's got a long film career. And then this is one of the few times you would see the two Coreys together, right? And to anyone who's not a millennial, that ain't gonna matter to you guys. Anyone who's after Gen X, when I say the two Coreys, that ain't even gonna matter to you guys. And that's probably good for the two Coreys. But anyone who's our generation, you understand what I'm saying when I'm repping the two Coreys. Why the importance of this is. Okay. So Lost Boys itself is a horror comedy. This is a Joel Schumacher film. And so he has a long track record in Hollywood. We can follow Joel Schumacher's work. And this became like the defining vampire movie of the 80s. It walked out as a top dog because it caught the attention of this whole group, you know, this teenage rebel group that they wanted to capture so bad. And so now they got it. So this story follows two brothers, Michael and Sam, who moved to this fictional California beach town called Santa Carla, which I actually think is like Carpinteria. Like I was looking at it and I know Cali pretty well. And I'm like, is that Carpinteria? No, you know where it was? Santa Cruz. It's actually Santa Cruz. I don't know, man. Let's verify that because I was looking at the boardwalk and it wasn't Santa Monica. I could clearly tell even in the 80s, that was not what Santa Monica boardwalk was like configured like, but it's definitely a California city. I think it's Santa Cruz. Like if you look at it, they call it Santa Carla. I think it's Santa Cruz. It's not Santa Clarita. I'm pretty sure it's Santa Cruz. So they immediately go in and, you know, it's a classic kind of new, like the 80s were all about new kids in town and like being, you know, having a tough time being a new kid in town. So this is, these two kids go to this California beach town. I'm a Cali guy, so don't get it twisted, which is Santa Carla, which is called the murder capital of the world, right? Which is insane that any town in California would be the murder capital of anything. But it's because they got vampirism in there. So the two brothers get there, and of course, like, you know, they're trying to fit in, you know, older brother, younger brother, and the older brother sees Jamie Gertz. And once you start looking at, let me get to the right side here. Once you see Jamie Gertz, the conversation really changes, right? Jamie Gertz back in her day, you can see this is what we consider good looking, right? You can see this is Jason Patrick, who I think still has a pretty strong career going right now. Kiefer Sutherland, Jamie Gertz, who I don't think is anything anymore, but Jamie Gertz was huge. This is a girl from the original, oh man, what was she in? Oh, she was also in Crossroads with Ralph Macchio. She had a huge career. Like she was kind of the 80s girl. Like there was, what's her name? Leah Thompson, and I would say Jamie Gertz was like the other big like female star in that 80s. So the two brothers moving to town. The older brother sees Jamie Gertz. This is how fine she was. This is 80s fine. He immediately latches onto her because she's trying to lure him in. She's already part of the Lost Boys group. So her job is to kind of entice him, recruit him in for David, who is Kiefer Sutherland's character. So then we start looking at the characters, like what do the vampires show the ability to do? It's kind of classic vampirism, right? They have super strength, speed, agility. They can fly, they can heal, enhanced senses. They have hypnotic influence, near immortality, and again, classically, slow aging or agelessness, right? So like a lot of vampire films, they're staying right in there. They're right along with like the classic vampire, right? They also show some traditional vampire weaknesses. Sunlight, wooden stakes, holy water is very effective. Garlic, even in the movie, was kind of up and down. Invitation is situational, like the invite in is situational, but they kind of hang on to it, although they don't do it purely the way you would think it would be in the movie. So they get this. Also, killing, now this is one that's kind of new and it's still debatable. Killing the head vampire can free anyone who has not made their first human kill. So it's possible in the 80s. In the 80s, it's possible to save someone from being a vampire. I don't know if that would hold up in every other decade, but killing the head one was like the big thing. Kill the head one, everyone can revert back. So that's how we get a happy ending out of this vampire race. Now, what makes the Lost Boys different? Well, they really redefined a new era for vampires. Like I said, these guys are more like a band. They look more like a whatever. I don't know, kind of like, I don't know the names. I'm trying to think like Cinderella. I don't know if you guys know, like if I'm saying the name Cinderella, I'm trying to think of like a hair band. All right. And I'm sorry, I don't know a lot of hair bands, even though I lived in the 80s because I didn't like it. Okay. But this is kind of what they look like. They're more like a band. I mean, this is back in the day where it was acceptable for guys to wear half shirts. Like guys, we used to be able to wear half shirts. You know how you get, like you see a girl wearing a crop top? In the 80s, a guy could wear a crop top. And I'm sure one of those guys in that picture is wearing a damn crop top. Like lots of product in your hair, even for guys. You have lots of product. Your hair has to be product up. You have multiple earrings, dangly earrings. What am I saying? I wear earrings myself. God damn it. But this is what the 80s, like their style was different. These guys were more like a band, like our bands, our modern bands during that era, and what these vampire looks like, those guys go perfectly together. So this is kind of how they set themselves apart. They're not wearing capes. They're not living in castles. They're wearing leather jackets, man. They're riding motorcycles. They're listening to rock music. They're smoking joints. They're roaming around amusement parks at night. It's a whole different type of vampire. There's no parents. They ain't got no jobs. They don't work. They don't go to school. They have unlimited nightlife, brotherhood, power, and internal use. So they're kicking it. This is what me and my homies would call ultimately kicking it. Now, when I look at this group of boys from a mythological pattern, I immediately see Peter Pan's Lost Boys. In fact, I identified that early on. As soon as I saw this, I'm like, oh, Lost Boys. It makes me think of Peter Pan's Lost Boys. And again, I don't want to grow up, right? Then you get the Greek siren, right? Like that's the Jamie Gertz. Jamie Gertz is the siren. In fact, when I'm watching the movie last night and we saw her, I'm like, siren, stay away from her, right? Because she was all seductive with her 80s Jamie Gertz cuteness and beauty. Like she just lured him in. And what's homie gonna do, man? They put him up there. There was nothing that he could do, right? So we also see kind of these cults of freedom, excess, control. So it becomes very European folklore vampire. Now, the psychological meaning is that it's really hot here, and I'm going to turn on this AC. Okay, I hope that isn't going to be too noisy. I think we're on a good track. So the psychological meaning is really the embodiment of peer pressure. David finds himself in this situation because of peer pressure. They never force him to do anything except they offer adventure, acceptance, confidence, belonging. Hey, look, the girl's over here thinks you're cute. That's how she gets him in. So this becomes really a metaphor for gang recruitment, for drug addiction. They give him a little taste of the blood because they know he's going to be addicted to it. So these guys represent your toxic friendships. These are the fear of losing one's identity while trying to fit in with this group. And that's what's going to happen with Michael or Jason Patrick's character in this one. Before the Lost Boys, vampires were typically portrayed as old world aristocrats or gothic style monsters with suits that had a lot of money and were just buying up real estate. That's what we saw in movies all the time. Now, this new Lost Boys, they're younger, they're fashionable, they're charismatic, they're rebels, right? They're pop culture. It's like, so this later we would see these things in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like this is the bridge. Interview with the Vampire in Twilight. All these things would emphasize vampires as being emotionally complex and culturally stylish versus simply being like weird and frightening and living up in a castle, sleeping upside down. So the movie itself was not just about vampires. It was about these seductive promises that you get along with it. So I feel like this really advanced, it really brought vampirism into like a modern world, right? We weren't looking at vampires strictly as being old school anymore. We're like, what would it be like if a vampire were right here? How would they roll? How would they move? And then we look at like even greater adaptations like Blade. Blade is very much like Blade, I think, kind of gives you a mix of the Damaskinos and like the hierarchy, but still going back to like they're at the club and they're doing raves. So you get a mix of both. I think this is one of the early genesis of how that style would go down. Now the next one is Near Dark, and this one comes out about the same time. This is 1987. Now this is a young Oklahoma cowboy who falls in love with the mysterious May. Again, that siren that lures you in. You gotta watch out for this stuff, fellas. I'll be telling you, that pretty girl, like, you ain't Idris Elba, man. If you don't look like Idris, why is she checking for you, right? Let's be really honest. Sometimes it's something else going on there. But this is a great movie because he is forced to travel with this nomadic vampire family while struggling to keep his humanity. Like they of course are encouraging him, go with the thirst, right? Feed him. He's fighting not to do this. So, and unlike a lot of other vampire stories prior to this, these vampires don't live in castles and mansions. They're not balling. They ain't got stock. They drift across America's highways in stolen vehicles, feeding when necessary and continuing to stay on the hustle. So they keep moving. Now, their powers are still pretty similar, right? You get the same thing: speed, strength, heightened senses, rapid healing, near immortality, agelessness. They're weakened by the sun. It's actually instantly deadly for them. Fire intensifies the danger of sunlight. They regularly feed on human blood to survive. So this is largely adapted from Gothic folklore about vampires, and it makes it feel like more like a biological predator than necessarily a supernatural noble. So we're kind of getting out of that a little bit. What makes this film different is that they give a harsher existence than a glamorous one. Vampires we see right now, these cats be having 401ks and accounts, right? These vampires in this movie, they weren't that many. These are outlaws, right? Drifters, highway criminals. These are survivalist clan. They have no permanent home, no wealth, no influence. Every night it's just another opportunity to hunt, to survive. So the famous bar sequence kind of captures your worldview. Feeding isn't elegant for them. It's not all like, I'm going to dramatically bite your neck, right? It's terrifying in this sense. It's often, it's chaotic, it's brutal. So we see all that, right up in there. Like, this film does a great job of giving you like brutality. Like, it mixes a lot of elements that we would see in the previous film, but this is raw. There ain't no comedy to this one, right? Like, the previous film has all these, Lost Boys has all these like comedic references. You have really comedic actors in there. This is not that. So you get a mythological grits and gravy in this world. It's really not. Now, what did this change in vampire movies? Well, Lost Boys made it more fashionable. Near Dark reminded audience that they're still monsters, right? Like, don't think they're all just hanging out on the boardwalk near Santa Monica and having a good time. Like, there's still monsters among this, right? Like, Lost Boys shows us this, but this one really gets into it and makes it like, yeah, this is about that. Don't forget who you're talking to. Now, another one this is one of the ones that's I've probably seen this movie more than any of the others. And this is Fright Night, which came out in 1985. This is at the height of me like starting to watch movies on my own, right? I'm like 13 when this movie comes out. I got my own freaking VCR. Shut up. Yes, I had a VCR in my room, and I was a baller for having that VCR in my own little mini TV in there, right? And a vampire screenplay by Booker based on 90s New Orleans. Oh man, you know what? I will already check out your book. I'm in Louisiana right now. I was just in New Orleans like 6 months ago, man, and I'm telling you, that is prime time. Like, you are right on there, man. And like, you're scaring me now because I'm in Louisiana, but I definitely could see that story come together. I'm excited about this for you on that screenplay. Look, I meet writers all the time. That's who I am, guys. That's who you messing with, man. I be connected with big time writers. These guys will probably write the screenplay and blow up, and he's gonna call, and they're gonna need a consultant. They're gonna call me. You're like, yeah, get that guy off of YouTube. He's a great consultant for mythology. So we're all praying for you right now. Maybe some of us can actually be in the movie. I got a couple people in here who I think we'd make great vampires, but I'm excited about that, and I'm glad I could be helpful in you working out your ideas on vampirism. So this next one, again, I said it's Fright Night, which is one of my favorites. This comes out in 1985. This is Tom Holland, not that Tom Holland, the director Tom Holland, and it asks a terrifying question, right? This is it. Vampires don't live in castles in Transylvania anymore, right? What if these fuckers move into our neighborhoods? That's what this movie's about. You come in, everybody knows a classic story, man. Like, you got somebody new moving into the neighborhood, you checking them out, you testing them. What if that's a vampire? And so this is what we watch. You get a sci-fi fan who's Charlie Brewster, who comes convinced that his neighbor, Jerry Dandridge, is a vampire responsible for a string of murders in, I think this is like Phoenix. I want to say this is like Phoenix or something like that is where this takes place. So it's like a completely suburban environment, and now you got a goddamn vampire living next door. So this is, it's a great, I think Roddy McDowall is in this film. That's not Diane Weiss. I'm trying to think of who the mom is, but it's definitely Roddy McDowall, and one of, like, he's getting towards the end of his illustrious career, but he gives a great performance in here. Now, this Jerry Dandridge vampire, he's very vampire, right? Superhuman strength, incredible speed and reflexes, flight, shape-shifting. He can turn to a bat, and he turns into a wolf, right? He has hypnosis and mind control, rapid regenerating, enhanced senses, near immortality. The guy's smooth. He's got a good smile on him. You see this dude? He's like, yeah. That's not even vampire ability. That's just straight macking skills right there. So he has all that in addition to being a vampire. This is one of the most charming vampires I've ever seen, right? Now, his weakness stays traditional. Sunlight, wooden stakes, holy water, crosses. But here's the thing. Okay, I'm going to tell you something right now. We're not going to talk about 30 Days of Night on this channel, okay? And the reason we're not going to talk about 30 Days of Night is because it's the most terrifying vampire movie I have ever seen. I refuse to have conversations about 30 Days of Night because I don't really remember what that movie was about, right? I don't. I'm only going to say this because JDM News brought this forth that 30 Days of Night, yeah, should be talked about, but it's scary. Do not watch this movie if you want to sleep that night. I'm telling you right now, man. You're right. It was absolutely terrifying. You see, I have a meter. I can only watch I watch scary movies, horror movies all the time. I have a limit, man. I didn't realize that when I was a child. I didn't feel like I had a limit, right? But I do now. And that one is like, it's so many stages above my limit that I don't even care anymore. I don't care what you say. That is one of the most terrifying vampire movies at all. And if you guys want to watch it, go right ahead. But don't talk. We are not going to talk about that movie because of how terrifying that movie is. But thank you for adding that to the conversation. That's more context, right? So let's get back to this. Some safe vampirism, right? This is safe vampirism. Like this dude here, this vampire, he's very modern. He buys a beautiful home, dresses cool, he's very polite. He's a handsome guy. He's the perfect neighbor, right? But the kids know something wrong with this dude here. Then he comes over and he's after the mom, right? That's the main thing. You come over and try to give him my mom. What's up with that? So this is kind of like, this guy is still a lot more in the pattern. Like when I look at the mythology, he reminds me of Count Dracula. He's this very sophisticated predator. Like he's a smooth killer, right? He's the wolf in sheep's clothing. Literally, he can become the wolf. He's a tempter. He uses charm. He charms. Everybody's on his side, and everybody hates you if you're opposed to him because, like, why are you sweating this guy? He's much cooler than you, right? He is the folklore nighttime demon, right? Yeah, he's got wine. He's got the smile. You're gonna fall for this guy. So this movie explores the fear that adults can't always recognize. Like, we have to rely on fresh, young minds because kids are going to be like, what the hell is that? On everything. And that's what the youth in this does. So Jerry, when we really see him, man, this is a guy, he's groomed because he goes after this. This will give you some context. Amanda Bierce, this is how old this stuff is. Amanda Bierce, who would be in, oh man, what's the movie? Al Bundy, My Wife and Kids. What was it? Whatever Al Bundy stuff was, man. Hey, I can't think. It was My Wife and Kids. That don't seem like that was the name of it, man. Married with Children. Was it that? Yeah, I think it was Married with Children. Again, that's how that thing's been off of TV forever. And Amanda Bierce comes from that lineage. She was a teenager in this, and she gets seduced by this vampire. So he puts everything together that he's not abusive. He's very calm. He'll take your mom. This is that dude, man. Imagine the dude that will hit on your mom and then snatch your girl too. You're gonna take your mom and he takes your girl and left you standing there all by yourself, right? So he's the ultimate manipulator, groomer, predator, narcissist. They don't rely on brute force until they have to, and then he'll let loose the dogs on you, man. He'll let the Dobermans out on that ass, right? Which is what he does repeatedly. Now, did this have a change in vampire movies? Married with Children. Marcy Darcy. Man, you're good at this, man. You're actually got like that. Marcy Darcy. So she was the young teenage girl in this movie. So that just gives us some historical context about how far. I mean, this is 1987, 85. It's a long time ago for you guys, not for me. It seems like yesterday for me. So it's very different. So, you know, if we look at all four of these movies that we put together, we can kind of see how vampirism is spreading out, how it's changed, how this decade put its stamp on vampirism. And I don't know, like I was watching Blackula the other day, which I guess was the 70s style, man. The 70s did have a certain swing to it, and it definitely was conveyed in this movie, in that movie as well. So we get that, but I feel like this kind of took us into a direction that I think we're staying with a lot more. We've kind of moved away. We've gone back to it. Like I watched The Demeter, and I've watched Blade, man, Lovers and Strangers. Oh my God! You know what, man? The soundtrack from The Lost Boys is actually great too. Yeah, that's pretty amazing story, man. Yeah, thank you for bringing it. It is and again, this is why we get back to talking about what the 80s were. Go listen to that sound. You can listen to the soundtrack outside of even the movies, right? You can listen. Thank you so much, Dave. Right? You can listen to the music outside of watching the movie and still get, like, there's a lot of 80s experience in that movie. It's a great kind of cultural time travel because it's funny. Even though my wife was ripping on the movie, right? Which, okay, you're bopping all the music. Like, I remember this song. I remember that hairstyle. Like, my wife was one of those. Right? She was on American Bandstand. She's like the only black girl on American Bandstand. She lived in LA. So she was all into the culture and the movie. In fact, her partner on American Bandstand, Cry Little Sister. Excellent song. Like the whole soundtrack was banging on this movie. It's one of the most amazing soundtracks for a vampire movie, because where do you come from? I can't remember all the songs, but it was great just listening to it. Like they started off like that, because what we did is I didn't tell her what I was gonna put on, so she's like, I'm closing my eyes and I'm just listening, right? Just listening. And she was like, wait a minute, this is the 80s, just by what was on, what was in the soundtrack, right? So yeah, it was a great ride. It's a really, really good movie. I love vampire flicks, so I definitely had to get into this. And maybe at some point, man, like I said, man, I'm not gonna rewatch 30 Days a Night because I don't want to be scared. I don't even want to watch it in the daytime, but I'll watch some other vampire movies and I'll kind of progress it through the years. So maybe I'll take a look at what the 90s. They redid Vampire Brooklyn. Oh man. Okay. You're right, dude. They really redid a Vampire in Brooklyn. Like, man, who we gonna get on that joint right there? We get a lot of talent. Right? Good, right? You're right, man. I would fully endorse, right? Yeah, okay, you're right. This next comment, like, yeah, they are trying to normalize vampire behavior. They want us to feel like vampires are everywhere, right? They want us to be like, yeah, Marlon Wayans, yeah, I can see them get that done, Marlon Wayans, but they are normalizing vampire. Like, I watched, True Blood, right? True Blood. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, the whole time, like, really? So you gonna stop in a grave site and get down in a grave and have sex with a dead body vampire? That's normalization of that stuff on the highest level. That we're just dating vampires and you go over there and there's a couple of vampire chicks that work at the restaurant. I ain't having none of that. I come from Blade school, man. I'm a Bladeite, man. I don't got my Blade t-shirt on right now, but I roll with Blade. We don't play that. Like, every vampire, it's open season on all suckheads, right? Yeah, that 30 Days a Night, all you need is one. I think that's, I do remember Josh Hartnett is in that series. And that's actually where I started getting respect for him. He would go on to be in another a series called Penny Dreadful. Brilliant series, by the way. Like Eva Green, I think. Timothy Dalton is in this. Like, it's a great, like, vampire monster series. I want to say it's like set in, like, I don't know, 1800s London, I think is where it is, kind of appropriate for it. but they get down. So that's Josh Hartnett. So another great vampire hunting, and they go after like like an old school kind of vampire. But you kind of see, like, we love vampirism. We be talking about vampires all the time. So the mythologies are long enough that we can see all these patterns that come through about vampire movies, right? So this is just a pattern I saw. I wanted to talk about 80s vampires for a bit. It's about it's about lunchtime for me. I'm gonna dip off for a bit. I really appreciate all you guys stopping back in. I'm gonna prep my next myth lab, so I'll try to do a second session today, and I probably say I'm gonna get in about, say, like 4 o'clock. It's 1:15 my time, so let's see. I'll be back here at 4, and we'll break out another session. But thank you for everyone who's contributed in the comment section. You guys are brilliant. Oh yeah, Serpent in the Rainbow, man. You guys know your movies, man. Serpent in the Rainbow, yeah, that's deep right there. Like, yeah, I we want to spend some time with that one too, man. You know what, guy? I may mess with zombies. This might be a good time for me to mess with zombies for a little bit and just kind of break out like zombie movies in the 80s, so we can do it relative to this. So I'm gonna dip off. So I'm gonna click up here out of TikTok right now. And then for the rest of you guys, I definitely appreciate you guys. You guys are making the channel so much fun for me. I'm gonna get some food in my gullet, and then I'll be back to talk to you guys probably about zombies, unless I think it's something even crazier than that. But definitely appreciate